Imagine a city where supermarkets are full of food, but no one can buy a single thing. For 48 hours, Marcus Alvarez watched his hometown starve. And no, this wasn't a movie. This was real. What would you do if your family's stomachs growled and every digital dollar you owned turned into nothing but numbers on a dead screen? Stay with me, because the way Marcus survived might change how you see your own money forever. Marcus was no stranger to hard work. Years on the factory floor had carved calluses into his hands and discipline into his bones. But when the layoffs came, discipline didn't pay the bills. Gig apps did. Deliveries, late-night rides, odd jobs, all for a digital ping that dropped money straight into his phone. That phone wasn't just a device anymore. It was his boss, his wallet, his schedule, his survival. Without it, there was nothing. And Marcus trusted it, because he had no choice. Cash was gone. Everything, food, fuel, rent, flowed through glowing screens and invisible servers. To him, technology felt reliable, unshakable, almost permanent. But what Marcus didn't know, what no one knew, was that when the system blinked out, it wouldn't just steal his next paycheck. It would drag an entire city into darkness. Friday evening, it began. His ride app froze mid-payment. Marcus muttered, tried refreshing, force closing, even rebooting. Still stuck. Probably just a glitch, he whispered, forcing a smile no one could see. But when he pulled into a gas station, the pump spat his card back out with a sharp beep. The cashier didn't even look surprised. He just sighed and said, "Systems down everywhere, man. Nothing I can do." Marcus opened his banking app, fingers trembling. Balance? Fine. More than enough to fill the tank, to buy groceries, to get through the week. But every attempt, tap, swipe, pin, flashed back the same red word that sliced deeper each time: declined. His chest tightened. He felt the stares of people behind him, waiting for him to move, their own cards failing one after another. It wasn't just him, it was everyone. But knowing that didn't help. His car sat half empty on fuel. His deliveries, his only income, were piling up, waiting. Every second wasted meant less money, fewer meals at home. Marcus gripped the wheel, staring at his phone like it was a traitor. Just hours ago, it was his everything, his map, his wallet, his work, his lifeline. Now it was nothing more than a glass brick mocking him with silence. And for the first time, Marcus wondered, if the system could vanish this easily, had his life ever really been his at all? Confusion turning to unease. His daughter was waiting at home for dinner, and he had nothing in his hands. By morning, it wasn't just Marcus. The whole city was locked out of its own money. Grocery lines curled around blocks, yet every register glowed dark and lifeless. ATMs spat out empty refusals. Apps froze mid-screen, mocking their users with spinning wheels. The strangest sight of all, the shelves still full, overflowing with bread, fruit, milk, but untouchable, guarded by broken machines. A mother fell to her knees at a counter, pressing a necklace into a clerk's hands. "Please, just milk for my baby." The clerk shook his head, fear in his eyes. A man outside beat an ATM until his fists smeared red across the glass. And Marcus, desperate, unclasped his father's old watch, holding it out at a corner shop like an offering. The cashier whispered, "I can't. System won't let me." That night, Marcus sat in silence, his daughter's small stomach growling louder than the city's chaos outside. He stroked her hair, helpless, guilt gnawing at his insides. And in that hollow moment, he understood, hunger isn't patient. Hunger doesn't wait for servers to reboot. It comes, it takes, and it doesn't care what system you trusted. By the second day, there was no more patience at all. Delivery trucks sat on freeways, not moving, with their goods locked in place by unchangeable digital authorizations. Restaurants locked their doors and piled chairs against windows like temporary walls. People broke glass, fumbled for a single bottle of water, and even vending machines became battlefields. The city looked alive with neon signs still glowing and shelves still full, but it was really starving. People were starving while everything they needed was hidden behind dead code and untouchable. Marcus pushed through the restless crowd gathering outside a warehouse. Word had spread, inside were pallets of canned goods, sacks of rice, crates of bottled water. Survival stacked to the ceiling, yet the steel shutters stood firm. A voice cracked through the mob, "Break it open." Fists slammed against metal. Someone picked up a brick. The sound was thunder, a mix of anger and fear that echoed in one rhythm. Marcus stopped in his tracks, his heart racing. He remembered his daughter's face, which was pale from hunger and full of questions he couldn't answer. He tightened his grip on the strap of his empty backpack. For one terrifying heartbeat, he almost joined them. But then he saw the truth. This wasn't about food anymore. It wasn't about money, or glitches, or power outages. It was about people tearing at each other because the lifeline they depended on had vanished overnight. Hunger had become chaos. Chaos had become war. Marcus staggered back, breath ragged, the question clawing at his mind like fire. What would you do? Stay in the shadows, protecting your family with what little you had left, or step into the streets, fight with the mob, and risk becoming part of the war for survival? That night, Marcus sat in darkness with his daughter, the hum of the city replaced by an eerie, hollow quiet. No dinner on the table, just tap water in cracked glasses, and silence heavy enough to crush. His daughter curled against him, her tiny hand gripping his sleeve. She whispered, barely audible, "Daddy, I'm hungry." The words pierced him deeper than any wound. For years he had worked double shifts, hustled odd jobs, swallowed pride to keep her safe, fed, cared for. But now, surrounded by a city overflowing with food he couldn't touch, he had nothing to give. Nothing. Marcus buried his face in his hands, and for the first time in years, he cried. Not the quiet tears of frustration he used to hide, but raw sobs, choked and helpless. He didn't cry for himself. He cried because a system, one flicker, one glitch, had stolen his ability to protect the only person who mattered. Around them, the city still buzzed faintly with distant shouts, breaking glass, the sound of hunger turning violent. But inside that dark room, the only sound that mattered was his daughter's stomach growling, and his silence, because he had no answer. On the third morning, Marcus woke to the sound of humming, machines alive again. ATMs spat cash, registers beeped, apps blinked green like nothing had ever happened. The nightmare dissolved in an instant, wrapped in the illusion of normal. People cheered, laughing with relief, racing into stores to buy bread as if it were treasure. Marcus stood in line, finally able to pay, finally holding bags of groceries in his hands. He carried them home, his daughter's eyes lighting up at the sight of food. But Marcus couldn't smile. He had lived through the silence. He had seen hunger claw through pride, watched order collapse into chaos, and felt his daughter's hand tug at his sleeve with nothing to give her. In just 48 hours, he had glimpsed civilization without money, and it wasn't a glitch, it was a warning. Because what he saw wasn't resilience. It was how thin the thread really was, and how fast it could snap. Remember those shelves Marcus saw, stacked with bread, rice, water? At first glance, it looked like abundance, safety, proof the city was alive. But in reality, those shelves were bars. A cage disguised as normal life. Because what good is food you can't touch? What good is medicine you can't buy? In just 48 hours, Marcus watched his neighbors beg, barter, even riot, all while the shelves stayed full and the registers stayed dead. That was the cruelest part. The world didn't run out of resources. It ran out of access. And that's the hidden truth. In a cashless world, survival doesn't belong to the strongest, the smartest, or even the wealthiest. It belongs to the system, to code. And when that code fails, everything you thought was secure, your safety, your savings, your family's future, vanishes with a single flicker of a dying screen. That's not progress. That's a trap. And Marcus, he'll never look at a glowing checkout terminal the same way again. Marcus's story is a warning. Convenience can blind us, but hunger never will. And next time, it could last longer than 48 hours. Tell me in the comments, could you survive if the world went dark for just 2 days? And subscribe, because the next story might make you rethink everything you believe about money.